Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Biotech Project. Your duo of Scott and John are here to bring you through another episode. We have a great guest today. Can't wait for John to tell us about him. Obviously, before we kick into that, just a quick reminder, jump up on the website, thebiotechproject.com. Visit us over on YouTube at The Biotech Project, Facebook, The Biotech Project, LinkedIn, The Biotech Project. I think you get it at this point. You can find us everywhere at The Biotech Project. The only exception, of course, is Twitter. It's The Biotech Proj, Proj. But be sure to jump over to those social media sites, like us, so you can follow us and know exactly when we come out with a new episode. Things have really been cranking over here. I am really excited to hear about today's guest from John. So, John, why don't you let us in on the secret? Who's today's guest?
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. Hey, welcome back, everybody. I'm really thrilled about being joined today by Marc Silber. Marc, as we have said in the past, is in the recruiting industry. And we've said in the past that we really want to bring people to you that we think can add value and teach you a lot about how to land that next role in pharma. So I think we've brought you a really great guest today, and we're super excited.
That's awesome. Can't wait. We'll be back in a few seconds.
You want to break into and navigate your career in the pharma and biotech industry. We know how to teach you. This is the Biotech Project. From sales to medical affairs and everything in between, we're talking about it. No matter how you got here, from here to your next role is up to you, and we're here to help. You'll hear from guests in every role, from CEO to sales, recruiters to hiring managers. The Biotech Project. Here are your hosts, Scott Resnick and Dr. John Walsh.
All right. Welcome back. Very excited, as John said. I've really been looking forward to having some recruiters joining us because, we've talked about people that are in the industry already. We've talked to some leaders in their fields, consultants, people that, help you get through that process. But what about before that? And, looking for that next opportunity, what's going on in the space? Where are the opportunities? And I think something that I think is a real challenge is finding a good recruiter or recruiting firm to work with. I've been contacted by many recruiters and I have some great relationships with recruiters, and they know who they are. And then there's other recruiters that it's kind of a numbers game, where they're just looking to get as many names as they can and kind of hope that something sticks. So really looking forward to hearing from Marc. So John, why don't you reintroduce our guest and let's kick it off.
Great. Thanks, Scott. I think you segued by saying it's always great to find a good recruiter. So I'm here to tell you we have a great recruiter here today. Marc Silber is the president of Crossover Search, and he has been someone who throughout the years I've spoken to multiple times in industry. And one of the things I've always been impressed with about Marc is that no matter how much time goes by, whether I'm looking for a role or I'm not actively looking for a role, Marc manages to stay in touch, keep me aware of what's going on in the industry. And I've always been really happy and impressed with the work that Marc and his team does. So without further ado, Marc, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure. So maybe as we kick off, you could tell us a little bit about you, what services you offer, and a little bit about the life of someone in the recruiting field.
All right, cool. Well, I've been a recruiter since 2005, all in life sciences, primarily biopharma. I kind of fell into it. I feel like most recruiters or people in the world of talent acquisition do fall into it in a way. There's a similar type of maybe background or sales mindset or entrepreneurial spirit or, natural relationship builder that succeeds at it. And I kind of fell into it. I majored in finance and entrepreneurship at Syracuse, graduated, didn't want to do finance, found myself working at a small biopharma search firm. Then fell in love with the industry. So I always wanted to do something on my own. Broke away 2008, started my firm, which is called Crossover Search. And our clientele is mainly small and emerging biotech companies. Here and there, we'll partner with bigger companies, but where we found ourselves really meshing well was with the smaller pre-commercial companies, moving towards commercialization, early clinical stage companies. So as a firm, we're about 10 people. Right now, we're boutique. I live in New York, had an office in New York City until COVID, and now we're fully remote. So that's another thing about the lifestyle of a recruiter. I think you could work pretty much from anywhere, as long as you're maintaining those relationships. Yeah, we have like a bunch of functional areas that we support pretty much anything outside of discovery. So as a company matures and becomes a clinical stage company, moves their programs forward in development, into medical affairs, obviously, commercial G&A functions like biz dev, corp dev, strategy, finance, legal, HR. These are core areas that we help companies with as they recruit talent.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah, so I think one of the biggest questions or first questions we can ask is, and we've asked this of most of our guests. So you mentioned COVID, obviously that changed your industry a little bit, from how you operate. We also know it's changing the biopharma industry pretty
Sure.
drastically, especially in the commercial and medical side. Both John and I were victims of COVID's effect on FDA and approval process and whatnot. What are you seeing is going on, now that we're 2 years out from, the start of COVID in the biopharma space, and, kind of walk us through your thoughts on that.
So historically, my recruiting efforts with my clients have been primarily in-house positions. I really don't do a lot of field stuff, never truly have, maybe some one-off things here and there for field medical, really never any field sales, which are the bulk of remote positions in this industry. Um, for many of our clients, it's changed dramatically, really. This is, in my mind, the hottest candidate market that we've ever seen before. I mean, you have so much cash that's flown into the industry over the last few years, and the amount of new companies, whether they be startup stealth companies, venture backed, to now publicly traded companies that, I guess that's a whole other story of how they're performing right now. But all these companies that are maturing at similar times, and they're all seeking talent at the same time. I think even for medical, John, that's a functional piece of an organization that's actually been built out even earlier, phase one right now, which we see, where it's actually created even more companies recruiting talent there that make it even more competitive. So I guess what I'm getting at is, historically, most of these companies would keep a position open 3, 6, 9 months until they found someone that could relocate or be on site every day. I think they realize with the competitiveness is an advantage to have someone remote. Find that PhD, MD, or specialized talent that has oncology commercialization experience that can be on either coast, and then maybe be a little bit more flexible in that regard. So we've seen it. I think at the end of the day, though, it depends company to company what the management team wants, what their policies are, and how often they want people there. But overall, it's been pretty flexible right now.
Yeah, Mark, one of the things that I've found to be really interesting is I've had a lot of colleagues and friends in the industry who have been amazingly talented, but for one reason or another just couldn't live, whether it be for family or personal reasons, just couldn't live in one of the biotech hubs, whether it be Boston or Jersey or the West
Yeah.
Coast. And were always, in a way, denied some of these really great roles just because they couldn't be there. And I've seen a few of them now start to transition into those roles, and they've really blossomed and been absolutely amazing. So I think it's a cool time for people who are looking to switch gears, who would have normally only been field based, for those companies who are willing to continue some of a field-based model. So I think it's been increasing the talent pool that's available, and I think it might shift the way companies move forward. Do you think it's something that's here to stay, or you think this is just kind of the COVID bubble?
I think it's here to stay for a lot of companies. I think they've realized they do it well, but there's also some companies that don't onboard talent well or stay in touch as closely and have that human connection. That's why you've seen a lot of mid-management executive people, talking VP and above, even make moves under a year or so. Um, so it's I think there's certainly challenges with it. It helped plug the gap in that 2 year period of COVID, which we're still in my opinion, because pretty much every company is back full time. Total, it's a very rare scenario where a company says we're here 5 days a week. I think it's presented people in the industry right now with a lot of different opportunities that weren't available previously just because of geography. But it comes down to the company and the individual also.
Very
And
true.
how is that translating to other areas like I don't know if you work in commercial structure so much, like with marketing teams,
Yeah.
and I know there's a big push now for key opinion leader liaison roles, or field marketing or market development, whatever they want to call them. Essentially they're the same thing. It's people in the field that are part of a core marketing team, sometimes at an associate director level, that are really tasked with working with key opinion leaders. Are you seeing that is an area of expansion, and where remote opportunities exist?
Yeah, I definitely do. We've seen it. We don't like work on a lot of those. It's pretty sporadic here and there, but I do think, for even people trying to break into the industry, those are interesting career paths because it could be a way if you have more of a science background or pedigree that you want to break into either field medical or commercial in some way where you could use your scientific knowledge and expertise there to break into those types of roles. I mean, obviously, medical and commercial are split for the most part and under different functional heads of each company, but it's definitely been something we've seen a lot more.
Yeah, and Mark, you mentioned breaking into the industry, right? So a bunch of our listeners are exactly looking to do that. So maybe this question's a bit broad, so feel free to break it down however you feel fit. But when you get a call from somebody who says, "Hey, Mark, I'm really looking to pick up a role in the biotech industry," what are your thoughts and advice for them? Where should they even begin to start putting their skill package together so that they have what you need to be able to market them to the right companies?
It's hard. I think there's so many different recruiters. It's hard to sift through. But when I get introduced to someone, say through a friend that I've worked with, and again, most of what we do is mid management to executive level, where these are people that have experience already in the industry. So for us, it's a little bit different. For many retained or executive search firms, like we are, we do work in contingent, but there's obviously a requirement already from our clients. Like we need this experience already. But I always try to help people. I always try to help them with ways that they could make themselves a little bit more marketable, how they could search for the right people, who they should be networking with in certain groups that is of interest to them. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that could be helpful. I do a lot of resume critique with people just to help them a bit there. So yeah, there's a few different avenues that people could go down. Are you referring to more so just like the recruiter angle, like how to find the right recruiter, or what they
Yeah,
could do?
and that was really kind of my next question too, is how does someone, whether they're breaking into or looking for another role, how do they vet recruiters, right? There's many of them out there. I've spoken to some people who are phenomenal, and I've spoken to some folks that I really haven't gotten a lot of headway. So
Yeah.
how do you know the difference?
Well, I think keep in mind like recruiters are working for their clients, and that's who pays them, us, and we have specific remits to submit qualified people, number one, and then motivated people, number two, and then the right cultural fit. You feel that out with each party. So it's pretty rare that someone will come across a candidate potentially and be marketing them in a way. It does happen. Uh, so those are maybe some pieces there.
So, I'm not asking you to give away all the industry secrets here, but maybe you can share with us, behind the scenes, how does it work for a recruiter? You get contacted by an organization, they have a role, kind of. Maybe you can describe that part so people can better understand it. What is it like when you first get an assignment, and then what's your process like as
Sure.
you try and fill that?
Yeah, I've built a reputation of helping companies and finding the right people for them. It's not truly rocket science, to be honest with you. It's we get contacted. It's like, say, the chief medical officer is seeking their first head of medical for the organization, or there's been a position that head of medical affairs is building out their field team for in the MSL function. I mean, each of these companies has certain remits, which is what they look for on the qualification side and the personality side and the cultural fit side. So, there's all these different boxes that you could check. So each hiring manager has their wish list of what they look for. My team and I, we feel like we do search really well, which is the actual nuts and bolts of who's qualified and where are they. We have other resources as well where we could actually comb through the drug, if we're helping a company in, I don't know, DMD, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and it's a rare genetic disease, and they want someone that's an MD neurologist or something specialized that way. We obviously have to seek out those people that meet the requirements that they're looking for. So, we'll obviously bucket those people. We'll create our list. We have a database. We have all the people that we've cultivated and built relationships with already, which is important as well. Many of the first contacts that we make with people aren't a cold call, right? It's someone that we've reached out to in the past. You've connected with us previously. We've had a little bit of a relationship. It's stuck in our mind or in the database that is, I know this person is looking for this type of company, small, pre-commercial, or this person wants bigger company. So maybe to the listeners as well, even though a recruiter may reach out to you or you may get recommended to someone, it's always good to at least have a touch point with people, whether it's, I don't know, quarterly, half a year or so, give them an update, spend 15, 20 minutes with each other, develop a relationship so you know that that person has some notes on you or can think about you and vice versa. So, many of the people that we place aren't necessarily first time reach out people. These are people that were either recommended to us through a friend or through a colleague. And we know them, we know what to look for them, and we ping them, we share the role with them. We feel like on a good recruiter note, many good recruiters and good search firms know their industry really well. They know what's going on in the market. They know what the story is at the company, how to differentiate the company, what the positives are about the team and the company, and what some of the warts are and negatives, and being truthful and honest there. Then sharing that information, sharing the job, sharing the insights of the team and the culture. And then that person, that candidate can make the decision, is it worth me pursuing or exploring further? Then we have more conversations around your background, your interests. And then we could take all of these conversations, these 2, 3, 4 conversations, bring it to the hiring manager and say, this is this person, not just the resume, but this is who this person is personally, professionally, why we feel they're the right fit, why they're motivated right now, maybe a tidbit of what's going on with them and why they're picking their head up and looking. I think a lot of people think that recruiting is just recruiting active people as well. It's actually recruiting people that are happy in a position, and I think that is a good time to also look as well.
Yeah, so on a prior episode, we spoke with Greg Navarro, and he's actually written some really great books actually on how to prepare your resume and to do well in interviews and things of that nature. And one of the things we talked about in particular, for instance, was optimizing your LinkedIn profile and doing some other things that really make you stand out. So let's face it, when you're out there looking, the industry is pretty big, right? There's tons of people out there. It's a big, a big ocean that you can fish in. So how do people make themselves stand out so that people at crossover would manage to see them and want to recruit them into a
Yeah.
role?
I do think LinkedIn is probably the biggest game changer that recruiting has ever seen. I mean, it's been around for 15 years and not everyone utilizes it correctly. There's ways to be more noticeable to recruiters. But I also think that it finding a job many times, even for people that have jobs, is actually another job. So it takes a lot of time. I I don't think just the internet searching, if you're a recruiter or a candidate seeker, is the only way to do it. It's a tool. It could help you, but it should help you meet new people as well. I think from a networking standpoint, it's finding. There's all these different trade groups or industry groups. If you're in commercial or if you're in medical, there's all these different resources out there where you could get involved in to bolster your network. So I do think those are critical for anyone. I mean, even for example, John, I know you worked at in Boston for many years, like Mass Bio. That is probably one of the best industry sources that's out there that people could go to for career advice, networking events, and I think almost every state where there's biotech hubs has that. New York City Bio, New York Bio. Um, so there's multiple things that way. Um, but then again, it's also a matter of speaking to friends in the industry, finding those right people and asking them, hey, did you know a good recruiter in this space? Is that someone that I could speak to, network with? Could they talk to me about like what's going on in the market, and utilizing all these things? Because to people in the industry also, I've sometimes been asked, how much do I pay you for this? And honestly, we're a free resource for candidates. So I do think that people should utilize us more for what's going on in the marketplace.
That's perfect.
So can you, so big question that I have is we talked about many different types of recruiters. So what's some of the advantages and disadvantages with working with, say, an individual recruiter versus a recruiter that's part of, say, a big firm?
I think like I'm considered a boutique. I was on my own. I started my firm in like my apartment and set up a desk, and I've grown it to be 10 people. I think I don't necessarily think size of recruiting firm means much, to be honest. Yes, like there's mega search firms that have more people, more resources. But then there's the scrappier people that are laser focused on their specific field and they know it inside and out. Someone case in point that just does MSL recruitment and lives and breathes that area. I don't know. I would trust them. They just won't have as many clients as a bigger company would to put you forward in front of those. But they'll, knowledge point, they'll be just as good. So I don't know. I think it's asking the recruiter if you meet with them or get recommended to them a few quick questions. If they're presenting your resume, they are representing your career for you and you. So before you send your resume to a recruiter or search firm, ask them if they send it anywhere, and if they do, to give you permission to send it anywhere. There are some recruiters out there will have a resume, not have a client, but see an open job and then take your resume and say, hey, I got this person, in hopes of getting a new client, but they don't have a relationship with the company. The whole goal is for that recruiter to bring qualified people and good people forward for their client, but it's impossible to do if they don't know that company. Um, so asking them if they've represented the company before, do they know the hiring manager personally? Have they met with them? Do they know the culture of the organization as best as they can? It's a tough thing to ask, but or get like a real answer on. But I do think those are some questions. And have you placed anyone at that company? Because then it's kind of proves that you've worked with them before.
That's a good, that's a good thing to think about. I'm not sure everybody asks that question.
No, I think there's just some recruiters out there that will take your resume and put it forward places where you don't know where it's going. And that kind of makes you come off as indecisive or sloppy about your career search as well.
Yeah, and one of the things too is that all things being equal, right? If you're recruiting for a particular role, um, the question really becomes, how does one stand out to you? If you had 5 candidates that you're going to present to a particular company, when you're talking to those individuals, what are the things that impress you, or things that spark. Now, obviously, if you have somebody who the job description was written for, they have every possible criteria that employer is looking for. Well, that's different. But assuming you get a few candidates that are all pretty
Right.
equal, having been on the other side, I know that we meet with search firms on a regular basis once they're retained, and they'll check in and say, "Hey, we found these 2 or 3 people, yada yada." But what should people be thinking about? Because I really believe the minute you start speaking to anyone, you make an impression about who you are. So what are the things that you really pick up on, or other search firms really pick up on, that says, "Wow, this person's really dynamic. They're interested. They're excited. They're smart. They have the right qualifications to make you want to put them at the top of the pile and not in the middle of the pile."
Well, I think you hit on it. Qualifications to me, I mean, it is number one, or tied with motivations and the right cultural fit. But I mean, you can't do a job, for an executive search or recruiting assignment if you don't have the skill set or you haven't done it. Yes, there's correlating background skills that could transfer from one area to the other, but or like right outside the bullseye of what a company is looking for. But less so. It's really who's been there, done that. I mean, especially smaller biotechs as well, where they don't have a lot of room to make a wrong hire sometimes, or almost all the time. But what I look for a lot is people that have done their homework on the company. I mean, there's one thing to be qualified for a role and be the absolute best on paper, but if that person is now, I speak with them the second time and I go like, what research have you done on the company? Why this company? And they say, well, I just want to leave Pfizer and get to a biotech type of thing. I mean, that shows me that they're interested in shifting from a company, but not running to something as opposed to running from something. So I do think that people out there do have to, if it's with a recruiter, if it's with the HR manager, talent acquisition internally, especially the hiring manager, you don't have to be a total expert on the technology of the company, but you should read up in the press releases, get familiar with the company, do whatever you can to make that impression that you're not just good on paper, great on paper, but you're truly motivated and excited about that company. That's what separates people.
And what's something that would be a tip for people that maybe is just like a complete disqualifier? What are the things, maybe the red flags that you see as easy disqualifiers that people can prevent making that mistake?
Talking money and title early on as the number one and two things that they care about. It's an off-putting thing for a lot of people that have made lateral moves. You got to think about the hiring managers as well. Many people that have advanced in their careers look at their backgrounds, go to LinkedIn, use it as a tool, see where they've been, what connections you could make with them. But there's a lot of people in senior roles in this industry that haven't climbed the ladder and made the leaps that we've seen in the past few years, at this title inflation that's occurring. So you have people that don't really give a shit about other people that aren't willing to take side steps sometimes for the company and for the right thing, as opposed to just grabbing title and money. So it comes off as not a humble or approach that is someone that they want to work with. I mean, that's what I see as disqualifiers pretty early on.
Yeah, it makes sense. So when is the right time if somebody has a concern about what the title is? I mean, I've looked at roles in the past where the role is really, really interesting. The title is probably not just right. Gotten through the process and have had discussion at the right time, and it's been something that they say, well, it's either not, it's not something we can move on, or
I know.
something that, yeah, we can make that move. When's the right time, and how do people do that?
Yeah, and it's important to be transparent with, if you're working with a recruiter, right? I mean, legally in most states, a company cannot ask you what do you make. On the money side is it's a tricky piece to navigate. Obviously, you want to make as much as you can, but in a realistic, positive tone, while you're putting the other factors of the company and who they are ahead of that. I think the money will be there if you do it the right way, and they'll be fair that way. On the title side, it's tricky. I think you should put it in your back pocket for maybe the first or second discussion. Once you move it to an advanced discussion where you and the company are both investing 5 to 10 hours of time where you're interviewing with each other, it's important to break it out at some point with either the recruiter you're working with or the HR manager to have that discussion. So it's not something that you now invest all this time together, you fall for each other. They say, oh, it's senior director, but you're looking for a VP. And now it falls apart because of that. So I do think there is a time where it's important to bring it up. It's probably before that, like on site or full panel interview that takes place.
Do you guys, meaning the recruiters, usually have insight on where there's flexibility with stuff like that? So if a candidate, you call them and say, hey, I've got this position for an associate director role, can they up front say, well, that's kind of a step back in title. Is that okay to have the conversation with you more upfront about that and explore where you think
Yeah, I
things
mean,
go?
we're doing it a lot right now. It's something that with the market the way it is, I think people are seeing their friends make these nice jumps title wise. You're seeing people go from director to VP. You're seeing first time CEOs. You're seeing first time CMOs, CFOs, et cetera. So people are making big leaps based on what's going on, and they're qualified. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's what the nature of this industry right now is. So what was the question again? Sorry, I got lost
Just,
there.
do you usually have insight as a recruiter where
Oh
there's
yes, yeah,
flexibility in
yeah.
that stuff?
So with clients, we always do say like, is there room up or down a little bit, even down? You could find someone that's an up and comer that could maybe that they're not quite ready for the AD level or director level, and they hire them at a senior manager AD level. I think a lot of companies want that kind of that mentality of hunger and excitement, and that they don't put the title right up there. But yeah, we typically do talk to clients, and some it's very firm. This is a senior director. I mean, this is a VP. It's not going to be anything higher. If people are prioritizing that, then we shouldn't speak to them right now.
And what types of things are you seeing now with this competitive landscape looking for, talent? What types of things are you seeing put out there that maybe weren't put out there before? So maybe benefits or incentives, what are you seeing changing right now to attract that talent?
More money for base salaries. The compensations have gone up. I mean, I think that has a little bit to do with inflation and will continue to, but I do think in certain areas it's just gotten to be a little crazy comp wise. Companies will think it's crazy, but it's a great thing for candidates. I mean, the wages have increased there from a base. Certain companies have retention packages right now to keep employees, to keep them there. By giving more money, higher bonus structures, bigger equity allotments. Sign-on bonuses are certainly there in certain times of the year if the company could do it. Benefits-wise, solid benefits too. I mean, there's almost all the companies we work with have now adapted this summer shutdown, Christmas to New Year's shutdown. I mean, that's now like pretty much everywhere in the industry. It wasn't 5 years ago. Now everyone does it. Some of these companies I work with don't even have vacation policies. It's you could just take it whenever you need it. I mean, no one abuses it. I think that's a different story, but those are certain things that we've seen for sure.
And it's interesting you mentioned the vacation one. So a previous guest who's a leadership consultant for organizations and whatnot had mentioned that don't get caught up in the unlimited vacation thing. That essentially what that does is means there's no target to pay you out if you leave the organization, that you've left something on the table. So, you
Okay.
know, I think what's happening is, that's some of these benefits are benefiting, both organizations, but it's interesting to hear that they're, these ways of looking at things,
Yeah.
where companies look to hold on to and have things that would hold people for quite a long time now are realizing that that might not be the case.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
but with that being said, I mean, as a candidate, I think it is an attractive feature. I mean, maybe this year I only need a couple days off because we're busy, 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 but I have to do some things. And but maybe next year I have a prolonged vacation planned with my family, and I'm able to do it. So I think there's the yin and the yang, right? It helps the employer because of policy and payout, but I think it is a super attractive thing for people today.
Yeah, I know. I certainly would love it because I end up leaving vacation most of the time on the table at the end of the
Right.
year. So,
Yeah.
it would be nice to have that.
It does
So,
become a little tricky though, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know if anyone's using 40 vacation days in the year. I think that affects your performance and how you're perceived in the organization. So I think it all evens out.
yeah. So, Mark, why don't we give you the floor for a little bit? First of all, I want to make sure we say this. This is Mark is a guest on the show today, so we want to give him an opportunity to talk about some of the things he may be working on. And if you're listening, and maybe there's something that Mark is working on, we can get you connected with Mark. So, Mark, is there anything in particular that you're working on right now that you're excited to talk about?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have like five key functional areas that we support and work in for biotech companies. So we're working with a lot of compelling companies right now across multiple disease areas, platform technologies. So at my firm, we have 10 people. We're devoted to this industry, and that's what we're passionate about is helping these companies, which helps them in their mission to bring new therapeutics or treatment options to patients. So if you're ever looking to transition into the industry, talk to me. You could reach out to me. I'm happy to be a resource in any way. It's how I've built relationships with people that have matured in their career. I I don't know if I need to share like the actual jobs that we're working on, but certain areas where we support are MD recruitment, clinical development. Sometimes it's a little rare for companies, smaller biotechs that we support to recruit right out of fellowship or academia. It's happening more, but I do like talking to people that are MDs that are thinking about it and how they can make that transition and where and what the positives, negatives are. Do a lot of work across medical, as John knows, and medical affairs build outs. We do a lot of work as companies build and approach commercialization, and also on the business side as well. So I personally love supporting the business side. I do a lot of work with CFOs, chief business strategy, chief operating officers, helping them build their teams so the company be more efficient or do transactions, deals, equally for people in the science that may have a science pedigree or background or MD. I do think it's important for them to know that there's careers outside of just the lab and the clinical. I think they could utilize a lot of their strengths in business functions as well. Search and evaluation as part of a biz dev function, or portfolio strategy, or even new product planning, commercialization. I think there's ways to really utilize your science pedigree and background into other areas that's outside of just a lab.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things I can tell you from a physician point of view. They do a pretty horrible job, at least when I was going through training, about teaching you about what potentially you can do with your degree. The obvious one is treat patients, right? And that's what most people do when they graduate medical school. But I don't think the medical school process allows itself to see as broad of a net. So that's kind of cool. But one of the things we started with was COVID, right? And that's changed the whole environment. But I think there are probably a lot of dynamics and a lot of changes that are happening now, or that if you had to break out the crystal ball and you had to say, hey, a year from 2 years from now, 3 years, 10 years, whatever, what should people be thinking about if they're looking to get themselves ready to either make a jump in the future or start something new?
Related to COVID or just
No, just in general. I mean, or
yeah.
any shifts that you see taking place that people should
Well,
be ready for.
well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's the New Yorker in me being a pessimist sometimes or not, but this industry when COVID started, I never placed anyone at an organization that never met or met the hiring manager in person. I mean, field-based roles are separate. So, on-site positions, like people would interview, go to the company, feel out the culture, company would feel out them, they meet in person, shake hands. I honestly didn't know what was going to happen, what companies would hire, who wouldn't, what candidates would want to make a move. I was absolutely wrong there. I think the industry adapted, and so did people. And I think we've seen historic movement across the board. It happens to also be with the amount of capital that's flown into the industry and all the new companies that are hiring. But I think that's one thing to maybe look out for is how long is it truly a candidate market for? When does this ride that we've been on for smaller emerging companies and all the cash that's been there, I think we're kind of seeing it right now with less IPOs and less capital flowing in, and people have taken advantage of those movements. So starting to be a little cautious about it. Starting to be a little cautious about like which area you're in and getting the right experience with the right people that's there. I mean, people will ultimately still remain at companies. There'll be attrition at companies. Companies will fail. Companies will get acquired. So just I think that's one thing to consider, maybe for the next 2 or 3 years. Really, I haven't seen a slowdown just yet, based on the market. I think there's still a lot of demand for talent, and hopefully it stays that way. Is the hope, but I do think that maybe that's something to just keep tabs on.
So what do you think is driving the whole, it's the buyer market for the candidate right now in many ways, right? What do you think? We talked to a prior guest too about the great resignation, right? A lot of people leaving where they're at, reevaluating life, things like that. But what do you
Not a
think?
huge fan of that term.
Why is that?
I don't know. I feel like it comes with like resigning or leaving a company without actually mentioning there's so many opportunities for people. Why not make a move for something better? So I
Sure.
think the whole economy has been really ripping for the past 2 years, and there's so many. Yes, people are resigning, but they're actually getting better money, better titles, better opportunities, more money, going to exciting places, and so I think there should be more of a positive spin on it.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. It is a good thing
Very
in a
good
way.
point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we come towards the end of our time, I always like to make sure that we give our guests an opportunity to circle back how people can connect with them. So if you want to share with us, how should people reach out to you? What are some of the ways people can connect with you and find out what you're working on and the projects you're working on?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place, or shoot me an email. We could always find time to talk, meet virtually, potentially. Um, my name's Marc Silber, Marcsilber. On LinkedIn, my firm is called Crossover Search. Even if it's not me that could help, maybe one of my colleagues at my firm could be a source of information or help in building a relationship with not just me, but with us as a whole. So we're familiar with each other, and we could be of help at some point.
Yeah, and we'll have your bio and your contact info on the website at the biotechproject.com. Just click on the link for Marc's episode, and all his information will be at the bottom of the page there. Any parting words of wisdom for folks that are evaluating their situations now, Marc? Something they should be looking out for, something you think is going to be really exciting on the short-term horizon?
I don't know. I mean, my parting wisdom would be just, you got to always be conscious of your network and always networking with people. It's the best way that people find jobs. Recruiters are not. I mean, it's through people that like you, want to work with you, think highly of you. I can't tell you how many times people land jobs because they worked with someone previously, um, or it was someone gets called about a job, it's not for them, and they say, here's this person or this person, I think they'd be great. I mean, that happens more than you know, and I think that's the best way to make an impression. So keeping your network healthy, making sure you're doing the right thing with references as well. I've seen that become the most important part of processes now, especially in this remote virtual world, is how important references are and keeping those up to date.
Great. Well,
Yeah,
Marc, this has
yeah.
been. Go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, that's something that John, you and I talked about recently on an episode that, we did together, that your reputation and those connections you make throughout your career are really vital, especially, when we look at how small and tight knit this community is, and as these smaller companies start to pick the cream of the crop leadership, there's great opportunities for past connections to
It's
bring fruit.
huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. I've seen things fall apart because someone doesn't put forward the right references. It's an indication of why, then it makes the company second guess a little bit. Why they put that person? Why didn't they put someone that they reported into or worked closely with? Why won't that person be available? I think those are really critical pieces. So, yes, colleagues and peers are one thing, but definitely people that you've worked closely with, that you've reported to or represented in some way, it's so huge nowadays.
Yep. Well, I mean, look, reputation is everything. We've said it a couple times on the podcast, and exactly the reason why we're glad that you were here with us today, Marc. Again, I'll circle back to where I started. I've always enjoyed the conversations we've had. I've always enjoyed the talent that you bring to the industry. So I want to thank you so much for your time today. I learned a lot, and I hope everybody listening did as well.
Yeah, I have to echo that. It's been, really cool to talk to you today, Marc, learn a little bit about you and kind of get your insight. I definitely have some notes to write down, and I'll be connecting with you on LinkedIn. So look out for that.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, guys. It was fun. If you have any other questions, let me know. I'd love to join you again at some point.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. That'd be great. Hey, everybody, thanks for listening. And again, go to our website, thebiotechproject.com. Check us out on YouTube if that's your preferred method of watching, or take a listen to us on any of the podcasting platforms out there. We're on them all, everything from Spotify to Apple Music to you could even ask your Alexa to play it for you. So if you are busy cooking and you want something good to listen to, just say, hey, Alexa, can you play the Biotech Project, and take a listen. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to the Biotech Project. Scott and John have 50 years of combined expertise, with roles that have covered everything from frontline sales to senior vice president of medical affairs. Scott and John are industry veterans, equipping you with knowledge from guests in every role from CEO to sales, recruiters to hiring managers. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten some useful and practical information. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, check out the website at www.thebiotechproject.com. And for questions and comments, send an email to hosts@thebiotechproject.com. See you next time.